Hi.
Live. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
We are so excited to have Sophie on my channel. I'm Jessica, my channel,
I'm
and we
Caitlin.
have Caitlin here, which I'm super excited to go follow her if you haven't yet. She just hit 500, which is super exciting. And then, of course, we have the amazing Sophie Lark here, which is the reason you're all here. Welcome.
Caitlin, your username might be one of my favorites. That is so adorable. I mean, obviously, I'm biased. I named my group the Love Larks, but throw in a little alliteration, I'm like sold.
Okay. We're gonna start saying our favorite book of Sophie's. So, Caitlin, you can go first. I don't know what your answer is, though.
Can I cheat and say my favorite one from each series?
No.
Oh, yeah. There's no rule. I mean, there is rules, but we made them up, so.
Okay, so for Brutal Birthrights, my favorite is Stolen Air because Miko, and I just love the gothic vibe, and Captive, yes. Underworld, it's definitely going to be Snow because they just go through so much together, and it's my absolute favorite one. I won't spoil anything. And then Kingmakers, it has to be The Bully because Redemption Arc. I was just telling Jess about this. I was like, y'all know I didn't like Dean, but he became one of my favorites.
I can tell that our taste is very aligned. That's like basically what I would say too.
Yes. Those are my favorites.
I have not gotten past one in Kingmakers. So when she said Dean's her favorite, I'm like, excuse me? After what he did in book one?
There is nothing in the world that I love more than when someone reads The Air and loathes Dean, and then by The Bully, they're like, I don't know how you made me love him, now he's my favorite. That's my favorite thing, when people are absolute Dean haters and then I can convert them.
I was a Dean hater. We were in your Facebook group, and I was on the threads, and I was like, I can't stand Dean. I don't know how y'all like him. Look at what he did.
You gotta take people to the lowest low to bring them back up to the heights. But when they're at the low, the reader's like, I'll kill them.
I was like, that is my standard for redemption, a character redemption arc now.
Well, Erin Ronnie, the girl who designed that shirt, who is one of my admins, she is the one who loved bully romance. And when I started writing that one, she was like, it is all about the grovel. You have to get the grovel right. That's the thing that matters. And I centered the whole book around it from her good advice. So
it worked.
Okay, we're getting so many comments of people's favorites. Love for Dean. Okay, I trust you.
Give him time.
I have to agree though with a lot of people. Broken Vow is my favorite.
I like Broken Vow.
It was so good. Our cowboy vigilante. I just love him so much.
That was one of those books, that one and Brutal Prince. I could hear Raylan's voice in my head. His dialogue was always so easy to write. I knew exactly what he would say. No matter how grumpy Riona was being, he always had the perfect, diffusing, self-deprecating answer to just thaw her right out.
They were a perfect pairing.
Yeah. But so many people. I did love Bloody Heart a lot because I love a good time jump where they can't be together and then they find their way to each other.
I love that you mentioned that, Jessica, because I get more comments about that one page in the book than about anything else, which is where it says 8 years later. So many people wrote me to be like, when I flipped that page, my heart just died inside of me. Because even though from the other books that we're talking about a tragedy or a long time period of unhappiness for Dante, you don't really quite put the timeline together until that moment in the book where you're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
It's hard. Okay, what is your favorite? I know that's very hard.
Well, so I just reread the whole Brutal Birthright series, which I have never done since writing all the books. I've never reread them because I haven't had time. And right now I'm trying to pull out a bunch of quotes so I can kind of do a bunch of TikToks and stuff, going through my own back catalog. So I was pulling out all these quotes and all these things that I could use because Lena Erickson has done all new illustrations for that series for me. So I want to take all of her best new illustrations and pair them with all my favorite quotes and then make some videos. But anyway, it was really funny as I was reading through because I was like, these books really are very different from each other. And every time I read one, I'm like, oh, actually, maybe I like this one. And then it like changes when I go through and read them because they all have something about them that I really love. But my default answer has always been Stolen Air because that just, if it's like if I want to live inside of a story, that's the one that I would pick because it's so moody.
And now, was it actually Beauty and the Beast inspired, or is that just like a coincidence?
No, so it's definitely Beauty and the Beast inspired with a little bit of Hades and Persephone because, of course, they have some parallels in the storyline. And those are my all-time two favorite classic mythology or fairy tale stories. So I wanted to kind of weave them together in a mafia tale.
I love that. And it's so fun seeing them as parents then.
Yes.
The Kingmaker series. I'm like, you guys were already messy in your own book, so don't go tell your kids what to do.
So one of the most unexpectedly fun things about writing the Kingmaker series was writing the scenes with the parents, especially the opposite gender parent and kid. So the scenes where it's like I show Ada talking to Miles, or when I show Anna talking to Mikolash, because a lot of times I basically kind of gender swapped some of the character traits. Because it was interesting to me to be like, hey, I have a female version of Ada. What does a male version of Ada with a splash of Callum look like? It was really fun combining characteristics. How are they the same as their parents? How are they different? And it's always a lot harder in a second generation because oftentimes the drama of the story relies upon oppressive parents or shitty home life situation or a lot of the character development comes from that. Like in Dean's case, so much of his character is informed by his father. But when you're doing second gen, you can't vilify all of these couples that everyone already loved. You can't have them be like shitty, oppressive parents now. So it was hard to be like, where does the drama come from when Leo is raised in basically pretty idyllic situation? So
I will say Nero is one of my favorite parents after the Savage.
Daddy Nero is so fun because he knows that Sabrina is more like him than like Camille. So it's like he understands all of her best characteristics and all of her worst ones.
That car chase scene, I ate it up.
That was so fun. That was Rye's idea. He was like, I was like, I want to have Nero show up and have a conversation with Adric where they really kind of butt heads. And what should I do? And Rye was like, you need to have him take him for a drive in his car because being in the passenger seat while the other person is in control and you're just trapped there is like such a tense situation automatically.
It felt tense as a reader.
When you wrote the Brutal Birthright series, did you always plan on doing a second generation series?
No, not at all. So when I started in romance, I really was not as planned out in my series because I hadn't ever planned for things to be so tightly linked. I always thought that it was kind of like, oh, you'd have little Easter eggs from the other stories, but mostly each book would be a complete standalone. But it's almost impossible when you're writing characters that know other characters to not really kind of directly continue the story. So things became more and more like linked and connected and planned out ahead of time as I went on. So Brutal Birthright, when I wrote that series, I had no intention of doing a spin-off series. Actually, in Broken Vow, I was setting up what I thought was going to be my next series, which was the Black Knights, the mercenary group. I was going to do a whole mercenary series. But then when I was finishing up Brutal Prince or Heavy Crown, I saw this series of TikToks by this girl, I think her name's Claudia, and she basically edited herself into the Harry Potter movies. So it's all these like incredibly well edited with incredible special effects. You can hardly believe this girl's doing it on her own. And she wrote this like soap opera script of like if she was at school with Draco and Harry and they were both obsessed with her. And it was so fucking adorable. And it made me start being like, my least favorite thing about Harry Potter is the Draco redemption arc, that it was kind of half-assed. She like halfway took him there, but not all the way. And then because I was watching this TikTok series that had all of this lovely soap opera drama between all the characters, I was like, I want to do an academy setting because the forced proximity is so fucking delicious. So I was like, I want to trap him on this island, and then I want to have it be like a mafia Hogwarts, and then I want to have my Draco character, but do like what I would want to do with him. So that's where it all started to take shape. And I completely, even though Rye had already paid for like a logo and like all this stuff for the Black Knights, I was like, hey, throw away the cover that you already bought and made and everything that you already did because I have a whole new plan.
Oh my gosh. Are you going to do that mercenary series at some point, or is that just like...
Well, if I can tell you what really kind of killed it a little bit, if you remember the opening chapter of Broken Vow, or the second chapter, the one that Raylan's first chapter is basically him on like a mission in Africa, similar to what the books would have been structured around, is like whatever their mercenary adventure is. And the amount of research I had to do to write that one goddamn scene, to try and figure out like the names of like guns and like, and where you would fly in and out of in these remote areas and all this shit. And I was like, I do not care about military stuff enough to have a whole series about this. There's no way.
Back burner.
Yeah, I was like, stick in your lane of like imaginary mafia world, Sophie. Like,
you can give us a short story on Patreon.
This is true. My next one that I'm actually working on right now is a Nero and Camille story, because having written all of that Daddy Nero stuff, I was like, I gotta write them another bonus scene, because I had this great idea for like, if their families had first met at like a neighborhood block party, I was like, that would be so fun to write how they would kind of interact and how they'd be so different from each other.
We're excited for that.
Do you have to do a lot of like research for your mafia books, or do you just like...
Well, I did once we got, I already had been in Brutal Birthright, just things to do with like explosives, or how mafia organizations are structured. How do they actually make their money? How do they get away with doing criminal operations all the time? How do they function with the police? I had done a lot of research on that kind of thing. Once we got to Kingmakers, I had to do much more in-depth research for the classroom scenes, because I had to provide, when you're showing them being taught, you have to really kind of dive into some of the nitty-gritty. So then I had to kind of step it up another notch and try and come up with like all these various classes they could take and what would they look like.
I did have someone ask from Poland. They're actually from Poland. How did you go about like writing in the other languages? Do you have someone who like helps you and reads and makes sure that it's all...
So this is my curse, is that I'm always setting myself these like impossible tasks in the stories. So one of the hardest parts that I've ever had to write was to show Nessa learning Polish, because I really wanted to show the way it looks like when you're learning a language, and at first you can understand just a couple of words of what people are saying, and you can kind of make kind of simple, stupid sentences, and then slowly you can like understand more and more in a sentence. So I really tried to show that like at first she's just picking up bits and pieces, and then she gradually becomes to actually understand everybody. But it was really difficult because you can't just put things in Google Translate. You have to go find like the real phrases as they would be phrased. So it's always this like process of trying to Google like obscure greetings or whatever, like Polish.
I don't know how authors, like what this comment says, they're saying writing is such an insanely research heavy thing, and I never even knew. Like, I know historical romances take a ton of research, that's like historical, but even just like contemporary romances, there are just these tiny details you need to make sure you get right.
Well, and there's always some flexibility when you're writing in a semi-fictionalized setting. Like obviously my mafia world is not truly what the mafia looks like. It's a lot more like a royal family mixed with a soap opera mixed with mafia, you know, like I've made my own like culture and stuff. But certainly like Anastasia is killing me with the research. It took me 2 to 3 times longer to research even to get started than I thought, because there's such a huge cast of characters amongst the Romanovs and the royals of that time.
We were talking about that before. Do you want to go ahead and ask Caitlin?
Yeah. So Anastasia, we were trying to figure out, okay, is it more fantasy or like contemporary historical romance? Like what genre do you put it in?
So it's definitely primarily fantasy. This is an alternate world that is very like our world, but not completely like our world. The history of their world followed our worlds, but not everything is the exact same. And I've combined some real historical people. Sometimes I'll put multiple people into one character to try and like simplify things. Because it's like, for example, the Empress Alexandra, she had like 90 servants, but I'm not going to have there be 90 servants. Like I'm going to combine them into like so things like that, or courtiers or whatever. There's people where there's like a lot of different people that kind of fill the same role in the story.
Do you think it'll have darker tones, like similar to like the Sinners Duet, or more like on the lighter side of fantasy?
So, in some ways, this is a very hopeful and overtly heroic story. Like the Savage, Sabrina is an anti-hero. She's not like a good person. Anastasia is much more of, of course she has her character flaws, but like her burning desire is to do something incredible. Like she does have that, like, I have the hero drive inside of me. So in some ways it's very classic fantasy, but in some ways it is very dark because you are talking about a very violent and brutal period of history. And I would assume in a magic world it would only be more violent and brutal because the people who were in charge of various countries at this time, these were not like, you think of like the Kaiser of Germany or like the King of England as being like qualified for the position. No, these were just people that happened to be born in these families and then put in a position to rule. They were raised like celebrities with all of this privilege and all of this isolation, but like also all this danger. Like the Romanovs, the anarchists were chucking bombs at the Romanovs like on a daily basis at some points in history. Like it was, people wanted to kill you from all sides. It was very Game of Thrones, even though it's in the 1910s, which is relatively modern. In many ways, this was the end of the colonial period. It was very barbarous.
Well, like I was telling Jess, I told her, so we've gotten your mafia books. I know you have like your contemporary standalones. We've got your serial killer duet. And I was like, I just can't wait to see how you do fantasy romance.
I am having so much fun with it because fantasy is my first love. That's what I grew up loving more than anything. And it is a lot of times when I'm writing even the mafia stories, it kind of feels otherworldly anyway. Like Kingmakers kind of feels like another world anyway. So I just feel like it's a very natural transition.
Weird.
Well, everyone's super excited, and I'm super excited. Tori did ask, do you have an estimated release date for Anastasia yet?
Yeah, so I am canceling my pre-order. Everyone who has already pre-ordered is going to get refunded for that, just because I want to remove the deadline off of it. Once I started working on this book, I realized that like this is going to be far and away the best book I've ever written, and like I want to give it like every minute of time it deserves. I don't want to be rushed. I don't want to be stressed. If I want to go back and rewrite a chapter or write a second or third version of it just to make it like absolutely perfect, like I just want to have the time to do everything right with no stress. I think it'll be worth the wait.
We will wait.
We're waiting.
It's fine.
Well, and I've never ever pushed a release date before, so like making that decision made me feel so crappy because I really hate promising something and then not delivering. But I was just like, it's going to be worth it. The book will be absolutely worth the wait. So I was like, I just got to do it. Also, I'm on like my 5th version of the cover and I'm still not thrilled with the cover. So
that is a question I wanted to ask about, but we do have a question. Is Anastasia going to be one book? Is it going to be multiple? Is it a series?
Anastasia is just going to be one very long, very epic standalone book.
Okay.
So it's going to be probably 130,000 words. It's going to cover huge swaths of time in Anastasia's life. It starts when she's just a child. It goes through her teen years into her adulthood. Like it covers at least 10 years of time with like scenes all along the way and a lot of development of various characters. So
that's massive.
It's gonna be really, really huge. When it's all done, I'm going to write my next series set in the same world, but in the modern day. So if this is Fantasy World 1917, my next series will be Fantasy World today. Same world, different time period.
That's really exciting.
It's gonna be so fun. I wish I could write like 7 times faster. I have so many ideas right now.
That's a good place to be in, though. Like you just know.
Yeah.
What's coming.
Well, sorry, go ahead. What were you saying, Caitlin?
Oh no, I said we're excited for it. I'm ready for a big thick Sophie book so I can sit down on my sofa with it and just take my time reading it.
It is gonna take you on such a journey, and like I've already bawled like a million times writing like the first 7 like the first scenes that are like emotionally impactful. So I hope it's really gonna feel so magical, and I just want Anastasia to like have the life she could have had in the story. You know, like I want to give her the story we wish that she all had in real life.
I'm so excited. And you mentioned you're on your like 5th round of your cover. How do you go about with your covers? I know Emily does I love Emily so much and all of her art. She did your special editions, which are gorgeous. And you just finished the Kingmaker one, right? Those are finally all out.
You guys cannot even know how annoying I am to work with and how patient Emily is. She is my baby angel forever for all the versions of the Brutal Birthright covers.
And it was very worth it, those Brutal Birthright covers.
I am so excited to post them. I hate that I have to wait. I want to wait until at least a couple of them are live to like do the cover reveal, but I'm like dying to show everyone I'm obsessed with them.
They are in my top favorite special edition covers now.
It took us so many iterations to get there because I just want all of my covers to really exemplify the story. Like the whole fun of doing an artistic cover is like the Hot Guy cover is classic. It's incredible. We love it forever. But like all Hot Guy covers are kind of the same. Like in this, when you do a discrete cover, you can make it anything. And I want it to truly be art, like really art, something you would want to like print and put on your wall. And so the combination of Lena and Emily on this was just like a match made in heaven, I feel like.
What is that process like then, trying to either with the one with people on the cover or the special editions? Like, how do you go about even knowing where to start?
Well, cover design is so tricky because I always have in my mind what I think I want it to look like. But then once the artist actually draws what you said, it doesn't always hit the way that you want it to. So with Brutal Birthright, I had a bunch of pop art covers made and they were black and white and I was going to do splashes of bright color on them, but it just ended up looking very juvenile. And Brutal Birthright's kind of my most mature series. So I was like it just wasn't quite the right like tone or feeling, even though the art was really cool. So then we ended up doing what you guys saw, this totally different concept for what the art should look like. And it was kind of this combination of hard and gothic and soft it just like sings to me. I love what Emily came up with.
I think when you revealed them on your Patreon, like I commented saying like I love them, and then like the next morning I woke up and went back on Patreon and I was like, I still love them today.
That happened to me too. They really grew on me. Like at first I was like, yeah, that's pretty, I like it, and then I got like obsessed with it the more I looked at it, because that's the thing with art is that like good art, the longer you look at it, the more like you see. And Lena has this incredible gift for pulling out symbolic elements in her artwork. So it's like it's never just a picture of like strawberries. It's strawberries that like symbolize something within the story. She's so good at pulling out the mood. And
I love seeing all of her artwork on her like Instagram. I love seeing it anytime she does like a Sophie Lark scene. I'm just like, she captures it perfectly.
She captures it perfectly. There's such a difference between someone drawing what you describe and someone truly illustrating your art, because she listens to my books on audiobook and then she like draws like the images that come in her head. And like one of my all-time favorite ones of hers where she does the one of Zoe where Zoe's reading a book and the book is like breaking up into birds that like fly away. And like she did some for The Spy that have symbolism of like family trees and roots and things like that. And she's so fucking brilliant. Oh, sorry. I don't know what's around this one.
Jess is like, go ahead.
That like the like beeping buzzer that like lurks out here.
That's okay. Do you want to share a little bit about what you put on your Patreon? Because someone asked, where can I find the Brutal Birthright covers? You had put like the sneak peek in your Patreon.
Yes. So my Patreon, as Sophie Lark has grown and grown, it is hard for me sometimes. You're kind of like circles of people expand and expand. So the Patreon is basically like the inner circle. If you're an insane super fan and you want like all the info first, you want to hear everything and see everything before everyone else, you want the hot gossip, you want the sneak peeks, you don't care as much about spoilers, you just want the information. That's what the Patreon is for. And the Patreon is also for me to write stories that are extras that are like I can't write any more books in the Kingmakers universe because it's getting too hard for new readers to join this like giant shared world, but I can always write extra things for the Patreon. So it's the perfect chance for when people are like, I really want Jasper to get a book. It's like, okay, well, he can at least get a story in the Patreon.
I think that's great, just like as a creator to be able to do that though. So you can still revisit those characters whenever you want to.
Well, and one of my favorite things has been all the sexy art, because I'm not allowed to do a certain level of explicit.
Yes.
So Lena has been drawing me 2 versions of the illustration. So anytime she illustrates a sex scene, she draws me like the super sexy version that is so hot, and then she like draws on like a bra, and then we put it in the book. Like
And you spoil us on the Patreon, because you don't do just like 1 or 2 arts now. You be like 5, 6, 10, and I just be like, what am I looking at?
My goal with the Patreon, and the reason why I only have 1 price tier, is I'm not trying to squeeze every dollar out of people. I'm just trying to give you the best possible value at a price that allows me to employ Lena full time, essentially. So.
Well, as a subscriber, it is very reasonably priced.
It's not everyone in romance is rich. I'm always trying to keep things at an affordable price scale.
You had mentioned that your artist like listens to the audiobooks. I got a couple questions about the Underworld audiobooks. Are those coming? Planned?
Well, I want to at least do Ivan and Snow, bare minimum, but I'm not sure if I'll do the whole Underworld series, because a lot of those books are quite short and they're getting pretty old at this point, and they're not my best work, because I was just figuring out what I was doing. So they definitely don't sell as much. So I'm not sure if I can recoup my cost off the audiobook, because with everything in self-publishing, I have to pay for everything up front and then hope I make my money back over time. So we'll have to see how Ivan and Snow do, if it's worth it to do all the rest as audiobooks too. It's so expensive. Oh my gosh. Everything is like, I mean, the people do an incredible job. It's well worth it, but
it's a lot like putting into it though, because
it's a huge undertaking to make a professional audiobook.
Yeah. I listened to a couple of the Brutal Birthright ones though, and they are so good. So I really love. Do you get to like pick out the narrators when you do that?
I do, and one of the things that I did differently when I was creating audiobooks is I did not use the most popular or famous audiobook narrators. I literally just listened to 30 auditions, and then I found the voice that sounded like that character to me. And it's actually really difficult, because a lot of audiobook narrators are older. So it was really hard finding people that didn't sound like a Midwest mom, that did sound like a sexy young Sabrina, like they're very different voices.
I've definitely listened to audiobooks where I'm like, this sounds like so much older than what the character is supposed to be. So I love that you match them too.
Well, for example, the very first audiobook that we ever made was Brutal Prince. And so when I was listening to those auditions, it was my first time hearing my own prose like read out loud. And when we got to the girl, Gina, that we picked for Ada, she was so funny and sarcastic, and she understood how to deliver the lines like in a very funny and amusing way. Whereas a lot of the people didn't like necessarily get the jokes or read them the way that like I imagined them being read. And when we went to Pink Flamingo and we were like, we want to pick this girl Gina, they were like, she has never done any audiobooks before except like 1 short story. And they were like, I don't know if you should pick her. And I was like, no, she's perfect. Like, trust me, she has it. So
oh, that's so funny.
And she did incredible.
The Sinners duet, I didn't even think about this one.
So the Sinners duet got delayed because we were going to have Voceros do the voice work for it. So we were waiting for him to do it. We were on his schedule for March. Unfortunately, he had some issues happen that were really upsetting, that made him feel very overwhelmed with the workload. So he's not going to actually end up doing the Sinners duet, unfortunately. But he is going to do some novella and Patreon stuff for me, and we're going to do like a swap on our Patreon. So we are going to work together. We love him, but the Sinners duet is just an immense project because it is 2 books. So I'm going to have to get it done through someone else, I think. So it's been delayed a minute, but it is coming.
Okay, cool. I really love that duet too. I love a good serial killer hero, morally gray.
That was my
first to use Voceros because his voice was so perfect for Cole. That's why I was like willing to wait, because he has that like a very smooth but like very sinister voice, and it was so good. So whoever I end up picking, I'll try and find someone that sounds like that.
You did mention, because like Caitlin and I were talking before this, she was reading the Underworld series before you like rebranded, renamed, reorganized.
Yes.
Yeah, I had no idea. But I've read Ivan and Snow now, and those are so good. But those were not originally the first two in the series.
No, so the first book I ever published was originally titled Sapphire. Now it's called Luca, and it was the first book. And it went. Sorry, I'm trying to think with the new titles. It went Luca, Anton, and then it went Luca, Black, Anton was like the original order of the stories. But when I first started writing romance, I was not coming from like, I had read romance, but it wasn't like my favorite, like most knowledgeable genre. So I was really I wasn't necessarily following all the best practices of romance when I started, because there was a couple of things that I just didn't really get in terms of like what makes people connect with characters and relationship arcs and what beats they really want you. There's beats that you can throw away. I think people hate the third act breakup, but there's beats that people really do need. And I hadn't really figured all of those out when I started. So as a main character, Lex is kind of a dick and women don't identify with her necessarily. And a lot of people thought that she was going to end up with Black. And so it's not a great entry point to the Sophie Lark world. It's much better to start with Ivan and Snow, which are the best books in that series. So I just kind of swapped the order around so that people can start with the best books of the series. Even though chronologically it really bothers me. That's what we got to
do. I've noticed like your marketing is like, you guys are geniuses when it comes to your marketing. How do you go about doing that? I mean, I feel like you blew up within the past year and everybody's obsessed with your books. Do you feel like, did you do something different? Is it just more people reading you?
It's just momentum and tenure coupled with how many books you've released. So we certainly accelerated our growth, because for the first 12 to 18 months, I was releasing a book every single month, and they were shorter, the ones at the beginning. So there was momentum from that. And then Rai literally just is a marketing genius. Like he systematically tests everything. So when he runs ads, he will test every possible iteration against each other till he finds the ones that are like the absolute best ads. And it's actually become this like really beautiful connection with some of my readers, because Rai brought a lot of people into romance. He marketed Brutal Prince to everyone. We had a massive negative ad spend. We were losing like $3,000 a day when we were promoting Brutal Prince, because Rai could tell from the reviews that we were getting back that this book was special, that it was really connecting with people on a new level. So we basically took our entire life savings and just spent it on ads, which really put us in front of a lot of people. And it really brought a lot of people into romance that had never read it before. I can't tell you how many people, when they tell their story of how they came into romance, they're like, I was on Facebook and I saw this ad that just really grabbed my interest, and I went and read it, and I didn't know that I had never read romance, I'd never read mafia, and I was totally hooked, and now I've read every romance book in the universe, and it brought me out of my depression, like, because that's the thing that I love about romance. Like, I could not rather be a missionary for anything more than romance, because it's like the way that it can really just bring you so much happiness in your life and really kind of take you out of a negative headspace and kind of give you like hope and belief that like you could live a life less ordinary, you know?
And that I'm one of the people who saw Brutal Prince on Facebook, because I think I told Jess I started reading the series back 2020, 2021, when I was first getting back into like romance reading, coming out of like a bad season in my life. And I don't know, Callum's face just kept showing up everywhere. And I was like, okay, I said, it keeps popping up, so let me read it. And then like, that was it for me.
Well, that cover image, when we went from Underworld to that series, I knew that I wanted to do really close-up black and white headshots. And most covers were not that zoomed in. This was the era of like the 3/4 body length cover. But so I picked Callum based off of that like intense stare, and then I zoomed his face in super big, and like that was the whole cover. And it drives me crazy, because that's just a stock image. Like anyone can buy it and put it on their cover. So I always want to change it to something custom, but nothing performs like that cover.
Yeah.
Like, everybody gets sucked in by Callum.
It's the eyes.
It's the eyes.
You can't change him. He's perfect.
He's this French model too. And so one time I hired him to make an ad for me, and he was like, "Hello, my name is Callum." Like it was like so like his accent was like so intense. It was making me laugh so hard.
Oh my gosh. Brutal Prince was my first book by you too, but I think I just saw it going around YouTube. And I was like, ooh. And then it was so funny though. Like, even though it's a mafia romance, I was laughing out loud reading it, which I really loved.
Well, it was so funny when back then, I would just write the books totally on my own, and then I would bring them to Rye completed, and he would help me make the cover. Nowadays, we plan everything out and plot everything out. He helps me write scenes and dialogue. We're much more integrated these days. But back then, I had told him I was starting this new Mafia series, that it was going to be darker and more intense than Underworld. And then I bring him the blurb, and it's like, I accidentally set a small fire in his house, and it's like, it's funny. It's like, it's joking. And I was like, what is this? He's like, you wrote a romantic comedy mafia book? Like, he was like, what are you doing? And I was like, no, trust me. It's so
trust me, it works.
Yeah. Oh, just the wedding scene. Every time I'm just like, she did not do that.
I said she did it.
Become such a symbol. I'm obsessed with everything strawberries now because it's so symbolic of like just being a rowdy babe that cannot be contained. Like I just love it. Rowdy behavior and like just not letting anyone swoosh you down is like what Ada is all about. And I love how people have embraced her as a character.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's kind of freaky. I've had like 5 people tell me that they divorced their husband because that book made them realize they deserved better. And I was like, oh, I'm like, great. But also like, I never knew I would actually have an impact on people's life choices. So.
Wow, that's crazy. I think I missed a question. Because my first one was Brutal Prince. Where do you think people should start with your books?
Brutal Prince is such a great entry point because it is very funny and it is very light. It's definitely harder to dive into something like The Sinner's Duet that is my darkest story, and there's like a lot of angst and emotional upset in it. Mm-hmm. So that's why Brutal Birthright is such a great starting point in general. That 1-2 punch of Brutal Prince and Stolen Air really gives you like a sense of like when I'm being more lighthearted and when I'm being a little more dark. Like it just gives you a sense of both ways that I like to write.
And I feel like there is something for everyone in the Brutal Birthright series because all the books are so different.
I love when people tell me like who they identify with and why. Like I thought that people would not like Riona. I was very nervous when I wrote her character because especially at the time when I wrote that book in romance, their heroines were still expected to be very sweet and innocent, especially in Mafia. It was all about the brutal alpha man, but then like the very sweet and darling girl that like makes him believe in goodness again. And like that's kind of what the Nessa and Miko story is, but the rest of them are not. Like, because they don't really like sweet heroines, especially not when they get walked on. So it was when I wrote Riona, I was like, yeesh, I don't know if women are going to respond to her well. And I was astonished. The flood of comments I got where people are like, I am Riona. I have never seen a character that represented me so well. I am cold. I am analytical. Like, I have a lot of readers that are lawyers. That's why I made Riona a lawyer because I had so many people, brilliant women who always catch every typo in my manuscripts. Every single one. So Riona is for them.
Mm-hmm. I love her character. I mean, I think you write really strong women. And like you said, like a lot of Mafia can have just like the very docile woman who listens to the very domineering man, but yours really stand up to the guys. So
and it can be fun to bring an innocent into the Mafia world. Like Zoe and Kat were really fun characters because Kat comes to Kingmakers in the second book so that you can see. In the first book, you see everyone who wants to be at Kingmakers, who's been raised to be at Kingmakers. But I was like, now I want to show you Kingmakers through the eyes of a lamb to the slaughter. Like someone who is not ready to be here.
Kat was one of my favorite heroines. She was my favorite heroine in the Kingmakers series.
Because she has such an incredible journey from scared little mouse to actual badass killer. Like, taking her on that journey believably was so fun.
And you needed somebody like that, I guess, to keep up with Dean, right?
Yes. Yeah, well, she is forced to develop a spine of steel, and that's why it's very important in the bully book that at one point she's like, yeah, well, I'm not going to put up with you treating me this way. Like, we're done then. Like, she's not a pushover.
Right.
By that point.
We have more cat fans in the chat. I did get a question from Tiffany, who's in the comments right now. She asked on Instagram about the music for Anastasia, and I wanted to ask, like, do you pick the songs out like before writing? Do you add them as you're writing? I know that you share your playlists, but just like
the playlist gets started like months and months and months ahead of time, because whenever I'm listening to music, I go and like shunt songs off to the various playlists that I think that I have. So I already have a playlist going for my vampire trilogy, even though it's like so far down the road, because that's what's going to be set in like Anastasia world. The next book in the modern era is going to be Vampire Story. So I'm already putting the playlist together. The Anastasia one is going to be a little bit different, because on the Savage, I had gradually been adding more and more songs to scenes, and in the Savage, all 20 songs are inside the book in the scene. With Anastasia, I'm not going to do that many inline songs because I don't want to be jarring from the fantasy setting, so I'm only going to do it probably 6 times in the whole book. But the scenes that do have music are some of the best I've ever written, with the way that they mesh with the songs. And I am just dying for you guys to read some of them, because like I cry just listening to the songs while I'm driving in the car, just like thinking about the parts they're gonna go with. It's just gonna slay. I'm so excited.
And I always tell people, I'm not somebody who, like, literally before your books, I was not a person who even paid attention to the playlists in books.
Oh, yes.
But I just started doing it. And so like, I'll listen to the song and then go back into like whatever it is, like where you put it in the book, and your playlist. And I talk about it all the time in my videos. Your playlists are absolutely perfect for the book, the scenes you pick. And I'm just like, I don't know how many hours she spent on this playlist, but just every song works. Like no song is out of place.
I spend 100 hours on the playlist per book minimum, which was not the case at the beginning. Like if you go back to Brutal Birthright, I have songs that go along with the story, but they're just kind of songs that like make me think of the story, and maybe 1 or 2 of them actually is inside of the book. But the way I do it now, if there's a song on the playlist, I listen to it over and over and over, like setting a mood for a certain part of the story. They're much more integrated now. And the ones for Anastasia are so unique because I'm really trying to pick songs that sound timeless and worldless. Like they sound like they could take place in this fantasy world. Like the Cossacks could be singing this song, like that kind of thing, where it really has a vibe of like the time and the place. So it's a very different playlist than any I've done before.
I was listening to La Vie en Rose on repeat today at work. I was like, I'm just in that mood.
That scene was one of my absolute favorites in that book, because writing about homesickness is something that I have felt many times in my life, because I lived in Europe alone as a teenager, and then I lived, I've moved places alone many times, and I know what it's like to be in a place where you have no friends and no family, and the culture is not what you're used to, and you keep making mistakes, and that feeling of just like longing for like the place that's familiar and the people who love you is like, oh. And that song is so nostalgic, because it's like when you're living those beautiful moments, like don't you just wish they could last forever?
Yes.
What gave you the idea to like to link books, to link music in your books? Like, why did you decide to do that? Because I haven't seen too many authors. I think a couple, but.
Well, it all started with Stolen Air. Actually, no, it started with Brutal Prince when I was listening to Nausea #1, writing all of the scenes up in the mom's piano room. So I was trying to like picture the piano room. So I put the song on, and it put the image of the room in my head so perfectly, and I could picture the mom, and I could picture how the family misses her, and it made me realize that like when I listen to the music, it makes my writing better. So then by Stolen Air, I listened to that song Satin Birds a billion times writing the Mikuláš mansion scenes, and it really put this like moody gothic mansion in my head. So, and then I came to realize that for you guys, if you read it at the same time, it really makes it like a scene in a movie. Like if you try and picture the most iconic scenes in movies, and if you stripped away the soundtrack, like a movie scene could never hit as hard without the music. And I think that's true of the books too. I can write the best scene in the world, but it's always going to hit just a little bit harder if there's like a perfect soundtrack to it, you know?
Like I can't not listen to Heartless by Kanye without thinking of that scene in The Savage.
Well, and that scene only exists because of that song. I put this on the playlist, and then I thought to myself, what does this make me think of? And it made me think of walking through the ruin of like a destroyed lab, and just like, how could she do this? How could she destroy what we worked so hard on together? Like it just really creates the scene for me.
Yeah, I think Tiffany said that. Like now, when I hear the songs, it's like reverse. Like when I think of the songs, I attach it to a Sophie book.
Yes, it really kind of just makes the scenes, like every time I listen to Crimson and Clover now, that song means more to me because of the scene in The Bully, and the scene in The Bully is like they really amplify each other in a really special way. The playlists have become my favorite part about the whole process. The one that I did for Anastasia, I found another really beautiful piano piece. And so the moment when Rasputin is first introduced, you've kind of heard about him in the book several times, but the moment where you first see him on page, there is the most like haunting and melancholy piece of piano music that plays. And it really sets the tone for Rasputin, because at first I was kind of like, do I want it to have like a sinister sound? But then I was like, no, because if Rasputin is overtly scary, then the Romanovs are just idiots for trusting him. So it's like, you have to show that this man was charismatic. He tricked people, he manipulated them, he was sneaky, he got his hooks in you, he wormed his way into your social circle, and he messed with your head. And it's like, if I'm going to show him as powerful and intriguing, he can't just be scary right off the bat.
There's just so much that ties in with the music and the story. And like you said, though, like when you're watching a movie, the soundtrack is so important. It's just the same in books. So I love that you include that in your books.
Music is so powerful.
You had mentioned it's your favorite part of your writing process. Do you want to share a little bit about your writing process? Like, are you a plotter, a pantser? Do you know where things are going?
So when I first started writing, I was very much a pantser. I was like, I'm gonna write the setup, and then I'll just see where the story takes me based off of the characters and how they develop and what I think they would do. So I would have kind of an idea in my head of like, I kind of want the story to go this direction, but like, I'll just let it happen as it happens. As I started writing more complicated series, particularly Kingmakers, when I started writing Kingmakers, I already knew what I wanted the spy to be about. So I was able to write all 4 books with a lot of like foreshadowing and hints and clues and mysteries and reveals based around the spy through all 4 books. And I was able to take the characters through a very consistent arc of how I wanted them to behave, because I knew where I wanted them all to end up. And once I experienced writing a series with a much more thought out, long-term plot for the whole series, I got very addicted to doing it that way, because it just allows the story to be so much richer in terms of like how it hints at what is to come.
Do you think you're going to do more of the like TikTok series you were doing about your writing process?
Yes, 100%. That was a huge hit, doing the like, just kind of showing people bits and pieces of it as I was going along. I'm definitely going to do that again. I'm going to go do a whole series on my back catalog with the new art that Lena's been drawing. Because the reason why the Brutal Birthright paperbacks are taking forever is because Lena is drawing 15 new, gorgeous, incredible illustrations for each one. And they're amazing and they're going to look so good. But it just takes time. So we're going to upload Brutal Prints and Stolen Air. I'm going to try printing them through Ingram Spark this time instead of Amazon, because everyone has told me that the quality of their paperbacks is just so beautiful. So we're going to do them through Ingram Spark and check it out, see if it's nicer quality. And then if it is, I'll switch all my paperbacks over, and then they'll all have that like fancy paper and all those kind of things.
We love seeing business daddy make protein shakes and breakfast too.
It is so funny, you guys, because we had like the most 1950s setup for so long in our marriage, because we had rental properties that I like ran and operated and did the maintenance on. So I kind of had a job in a sense, and I did some other little like side jobs on the side. But for the most part, where I was working full time and I was cooking and cleaning like a little housewifey and taking care of the kids. And when we switched to me working full time, I was like, are you actually going to learn how to cook? Like, that sounds crazy to me. Like, and now he's like better than me at cooking. After like 1 year, I'm like, it took me 13 years to learn to cook, and you just like get better than me immediately, of course.
I'm like, ooh, he's wearing the apron. What's he making today?
That's my all-time favorite picture of Rye, is where he has the Beauty and the Beast apron on.
I already said if I, like when I go to the signing, I low-key want to get his signature in the books too.
Oh, you should. Oh my gosh. And you guys have to take pictures with him. He is so fun to take pictures with. Well, he's going to be there the whole time. It's going to be so fun.
Yay.
Do you want to let us know what signings you're going to?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm going to a Polycon and the one in Vegas and the one in San Antonio in Texas that Wander Aguilar is putting on.
Wander.
So that's the 3 that I have right now. I was signed up for some others, but I realized that I had overcommitted myself and I had to cancel a couple, which I felt bad about. But the first 2 years of this business was like running at a full sprint and feeling like I was going to die every minute. And I'm really just trying to be like, hey, I want to do this for the next 10 years, so I can't be so sleep deprived and never seeing my kids. Like, so I've had to pull back on some things to be like, I want to do this sustainably.
Mm-hmm.
My hair was falling out. It was, it was too much.
And then do you kind of like, what is your like progress? I know you said you're working on a signed paperback store, I guess, for those who can't make it to signings.
Yes. So I'll answer this really quick. Rye is coming to every single signing with me. He always will, because I can't stand being away from him. It makes me sad.
Aww.
And so we have been remaking my website, because for a long time it was the worst website ever, and I did not realize that like several thousand people were going to it every month. So I did not care that it looked like a tacky phishing scheme until I realized that I was like, oh, people are actually coming here. So
it looks very nice now.
So we fixed the website. We're going to have merch and signed books on there, but I'm probably only going to do it for about a month total, the signed books, just because signing and shipping books is the most time-consuming thing I do, and I will never finish Anastasia if I'm constantly doing book orders. So I'm going to do it for like one solid month, because we promised everyone I'll send everything out in one giant batch, and then after that, I'll probably just do signed books in book boxes. I want to do my own book box for Anastasia and get like a really gorgeous hardcover, gilt edges. You know what I'm talking about? Those like versions. Yes. Fingers crossed.
We're going to sell out so fast, though. I already feel the anxiety of trying.
I know you talked about it. She did talk about that earlier. Are you still thinking of like limiting it to Patreon members, or opening up like the Anastasia book box to everyone? Like, or have you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to.
So I should be able to do pre-orders and sell basically an infinite amount of them, because I have hired my sister, Steph. She now works for us full time. So a lot of those kinds of projects where it was like, before, if I made a book box, I would have had to be like, I can only sell 500 of them, because I can't spend the time to box more than 500 books. But now if Steph can do it, it's like, work her to the bone, guys.
I mean, being an author is so time consuming. So not only are you writing and editing, you have all these other side projects. So I'm glad you have a really solid team behind you.
We've really tried to hire more people on, because otherwise it's exactly what you say. Like, it's 2 full-time jobs and I just can't get everything done. I already feel bad when things are delayed longer than I hoped that they would be. When I'm like, oh, the paperback should be up in a week, and then it's a month, I feel awful. But it's triage here all the time. Like, we're bleeding constantly, just trying not to die. Like, there's so many things because things go wrong every single day. Facebook will be like, your account's shut down, or like Amazon will be like, we're changing everything, surprise.
Well, and speaking of book boxes, I just want to say, like, obviously as a longtime fan, I'm just so happy to see your books being featured in like more romance book boxes. Like anytime I see somebody's like Sophie's featured, I'm like, oh, buy it. I don't know who else is in it. I don't know what book it is, but I'm buying it.
I love that one. I love the alt covers because I would put the women on the cover every time if it made no difference to sales. So the Bookish box, which is like the biggest box of all, is doing a full Kingmaker set for me, and they are going to be so stunning. They sent me I hope I'm allowed to say this. They sent me the concept art, and I am already dying. It is so gothic and dark and gorgeous, and I'm just like, I can't wait to see what they come up with. They have the best hardcover design of anyone, I feel like.
It might be in their, they started like that Darkly box that's like a kind of a subsidiary of Bookish.
I think it is actually, Keelan. I think it is in their Darkly box. And then I'm also doing a winter anthology through them too. That's going to be like a short story in their like winter anthology. So I'm very excited to start putting out more things in boxes. When Steph makes ours, she's going to have like only the coolest swag in it. Like we're not doing the thing where it's going to have like crappy pens or whatever. Like she is sourcing like some really cool stuff to put in it that is all Anastasia themed, that is custom made by like Etsy artists or whatever. And it's going to be just.
You've heard it here first, people.
I was gonna say we're all freaking out right now. So like, is there like a timeline on that? Do you know when that's like going to be announced?
I have no idea, and I hope I was allowed to say it. I can't think they would be mad at me.
Anybody else, we don't know what they're talking about.
The part that's crazy is I think they're doing like 15,000 books, so I have to sign 15,000 little leaflets, and I'm like, if I do this every night for like 3 hours, it's going to take me a month. Like, so I'm a little nervous.
I might literally cry if I don't get those.
I can't wait to see them. They said they would send me a couple of sets, and I was like, honestly, I probably would have done it for the sets. So you probably didn't even have to pay me.
Well, because right now, at least for Brutal Birthright, so we have, I guess, technically 3 alt covers now, because Brutal Prince has Ada on it. I think Stolen Air. We now have that new edition that's coming up in a box, and then Savage Lover. So now I'm like waiting for other book boxes to do the other 3 so we can have like women on the cover for the whole
season. When are we getting a Broken Vow?
I don't know. I'm a total book box slut. I'll put them all in book boxes. I love it.
We buy it too.
But I've seen authors have to like literally get like wrist brace because they are signing so many books.
Well, thankfully with the Bookish box, they send you the inserts for the page, not the actual book, because that's part of what takes forever is unpacking all the books, putting them in a huge pile that takes my whole house, signing them like 100 at a time, packing them back in the boxes. It's so much easier to just do sheets of paper. So I'll just watch a show or something. And
you're going to be the single cause of all the Bookish box subscriptions selling out, because Bookish box subscribers, we get first access to special sales. You're going to be the reason those subscriptions sell out.
I can't wait to see what they're coming up with. I love it. The concept art that they sent me was like, they sent me this picture of like a Greek sculpture, but like underwater, like kind of like the scuba diving scene with Leo, but it was like these classic Greek, like almost like Greek gods in a sense, or Greek warriors, which is very fitting to the setting. And so I don't know, that was just like the idea they sent me, but I was like, I already love it. It's so cool.
This is so exciting.
That is very, very exciting.
We're all gonna go broke, but you know what? It's fine. We're gonna be happy with our books.
How
many are coming out? Oh, that's super exciting.
Of like my own merch that I've bought from other people. Like if you make like the Brutal Birthright ladies t-shirts, I bought every single one of those. I was in love. I was like, oh my God.
Those were very nice. I like that whole line because she did the shirts, she did like bags and like bookmarks and things like that, didn't she?
Oh, I bought like every single one. It was so clever how she came up with the taglines, like the ride or die kind of girl one for Camille. It was so clever. Sometimes you guys are better at like marketing my books than I am. Like sometimes people just really get them and I'm like, oh shoot, I should have thought of that.
I don't know, Caitlin, if you can answer this. Do you need to be a Darkly subscriber to get on the box?
So I think like Darkly is not a subscription. Like I think they just did it because for the like group of people who are more interested in like less fantasy, more strictly romance. So they're just doing it like on an as sale basis. Like I think right now they're advertising a set of like L. Kennedy books.
Yeah.
So I think it's just as they do special editions, they'll sell them. So I imagine Sophie's books will be the same way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, they're very clever business people. They really know what they're doing. They have been very interesting to work with. They have a very well-oiled machine, and they really are intent on making each set like a gorgeous work of art, which is what drew me to them, because I just want everything to be so beautiful. What I wanted to do for Anastasia for my cover idea initially is I wanted to print them as like old leather books, so it would look like an old leather spell book.
Oh wow.
And I contacted all these places, but you can only, if you want to do that, you have to order them all up front, and then I'd have to ship them out to everyone. You can't do that, distribute through Amazon or Ingram that way. So I was like, it's like the one time where I wish that I had a publishing house behind me, you know?
Yeah.
But,
do you think you'll ever go traditionally published, or?
I mean, never say never, but I love having complete control of the process. That I believe that's been the secret to Rise and my success, is that Rai does things all the time that no one has ever done before. He's very innovative. He does not follow the traditional rules. He tests things out himself. He comes up with these brilliant ideas of how to do things. And I love having control over it, but I would never say never, because I don't know, like my biggest goal with book stuff is to get like a TV show or a movie made. So like whatever gets me there.
Which the Kingmakers would make a fantastic TV show. Oh my god. Yes.
Well, my lawyer, my entertainment lawyer Tanya is pitching it right now, and I'm like, I don't care if I don't even get paid, and if it's the lowest budget TV show, I don't care. I just wanna see it.
Oh. Special edition Patreon. Get those leather-bound books.
Yeah, Tiff, this is clever. You were onto something here. Yeah.
I'm just so impressed with Mr. Lark's marketing. That's amazing.
Well, his greatest intellectual gift is analyzing systems. And so he came into self-publishing knowing nothing about books or the self-publishing world. And he just analyzed, and he was like, all of authors say this, but I kind of think it might be this. And then he would test, and he would be like, no, that's not true. That's something everyone believes that isn't even true. I literally tested it, and it's actually this. Like in terms of how the algorithm works, and also bots, and like there's a lot of conventional wisdom about self-publishing that it's like, maybe that was true 5 years ago, but it's not true today.
I know Tiffany works in like script reading and stuff. Could you say where they're pitching the Kingmaker or no?
Oh, so Tanya's pitching it literally everywhere. And we have an Amazon rep that's going to like pitch it to like Amazon studios. So we're doing it to everyone that we can. So we're just like, yeah, Kickstarter. I would love to do Kickstarter after I saw Brandon Sanderson's thing that he did, where he sold like 6 books in a package, and it was like the biggest thing ever. I was like, that is so genius.
Yeah. And I think he broke records with how much he sold on Patreon. So
well, he is one of the hardest working authors out there. His daily word counts are insane. Like I don't know anyone who writes more than him on like a weekly basis. He's so prolific.
I watched his like announcement video, and he's like, well, during 2020, I wrote like 5 extra books. And I'm like, how much are you writing? This is
and they're long books too, and in complex fantasy worlds, he's very clever. Oh, I never really answered your question before, Jessica. My daily writing routine is very regimented. I get up in the morning, I work out with Rai. That's how we start our day. We have like a little date first thing at 6:45. Take the kids to school, and then while I'm driving my daughter to school, I listen to all the playlist songs on the way there and on the way back, and I think in my head about the scene that I want to write to that song when I get back. And then when I get back, I put my music on, I go in my room, I sit on my bed, and I write from 9:30 till 3:30 every day. And so, and then I usually do my social media like on breaks or afterward. But I have I never used to get any writing done when I would wait to sit down until I felt inspired. You got to sit down every day, whether you feel like it or not, and just get going.
Yeah. How much then do you normally typically write in a day?
Well, it used to be, so when I first started, right, it's very like a muscle, like your mind gets really tired. So when I first started, it was really hard for me to even write every day because my brain would get tired. And even hitting 1,000 words every day was really hard. I really had to build my discipline and stamina. But once I did, I started writing faster and longer chunks. And so I got up to like, I could write 5,000 to 7,000 words in a good day. And then I was like whipping through my books. When I was writing a book a month, that was the case. I was writing like 3,000 to 5,000 words every single day. But then the book started to become a lot more complicated and difficult. And now a good day is like 2,000 words. Because when I'm writing Anastasia, I have to stop so often to look things up or to really think to myself, like, okay, if everyone has a little bit of magic abilities, like what does that look like? What kind of jobs do you work? Do you still work normal jobs? Does your job relate to your abilities? Sometimes not. Like there's just so many more things that I have to like parse through in my head that it's just a lot slower.
I know you're saying you wrote a book a month, which was absolutely nuts. I don't know how that pace is just so grueling. How many books a year do you say is what you want to aim for to publish?
Well, I don't really have a goal in terms of books per year. It's more just I have so many ideas that I'm so excited to write. So I want to get to them as soon as I can. But I also want to spend more and more time on each book because I really want to level up my work. So it's like it's perfect. It's not just as good as it could be in the 4 months that I had to write it, you know?
Yeah. I think that's a good mentality of focusing on what you're currently writing. Yeah.
Well, I had to publish faster at the beginning because that's just the nature of building momentum. But now that I have a big enough following that I can take my time a little more, I'm having just the best time, like really taking my time on every part of every scene and like just trying to make each line of dialogue like really punch, you know.
We are just over an hour, so we will start wrapping. That always goes by so fast. I could listen to you talk all day about your writing and your books. It's just so interesting.
I have so much fun with it. I'm sorry if I ramble sometimes.
I love it.
You're gonna have to pull me away from your table in Vegas.
I am so excited to see you guys in person. Meeting in person, like online relationships are so fun, but meeting in person is just next level. The love and the warmth and the like happiness of seeing someone face to face is just I can't wait. It's gonna be so fun.
Yeah. And I feel like so many authors blew up in the past 2 years and the community has gotten so much bigger and we haven't been able to see each other. So
yes,
super exciting.
It's going to be a lot of people's first convention, which is really fun.
Yeah. Have you done a book signing before?
I have never ever done any, so I'm like so jazzed about it. It's going to be a blast. I have gone to see some creators and some friends that I've met online. I've gone to visit them, so I've had the experience of meeting people in real life, but not like in that kind of setting, which I think will be so fun.
Okay, I do have one last question, if that's okay. I like to ask authors, what is, you think, your most underrated book that you wish more people would read?
Well, that's actually perfect timing. So the first time that I ever wrote a 3 POV book prior to the Kingmaker series is I wrote a book called The CEO of Cristo, which is a Count of Monte Cristo retelling. But the title is not sexy and nobody likes it. And the cover is like not my best cover. So like nobody reads that book like ever. But it's actually, in my opinion, like really good. It was the first book I ever wrote where when I read a scene to Rai, he like cried listening to it. And so I felt like it was a point where I was starting to like tear up and like my scenes were getting more emotionally impacted. And that story is, of course, very angsty. There's nothing worse than being falsely accused.
Very true.
So, but Emily just made me a new cover for that. So I'm actually retitling and recovering it, and I'm going to put it out in a more appealing package because I think that the book deserves to be read by more people.
That's so exciting. I'll definitely have to check that out. I didn't know you wrote that, so.
It was such a blast talking with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Caitlin, for joining us. Yay! Thank you for taking the time to chat. Make sure you check out all of Sophie's books. I believe I linked your Instagram down below if you want to check Sophie out. And yeah, that's all we have. We are both super excited. I'll see you at PolyCon. Caitlin's going to see you in Vegas.
I'll see you in Vegas.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
So
Can't wait. Take care, guys. Love you.
Bye.